Alright, so now that we've discussed common places for hidden sugar to be found in foods, I think it's really important to take a deeper look at tips for you all at home to reduce your sugar intake. So the most important thing I think to first discuss is the amount of added sugar that should be in your diet. So it's currently recommended that men consume about 150 calories or 9 teaspoons of added sugar or less. And for women, it's 100 calories or about 6 teaspoons or less. And there are 4 grams in 1 teaspoon of sugar. So I think in terms of browsing for products at the grocery store, the first thing you should do is look for the total amount of sugar in a product. So for example, I picked up these 2 granolas because I want to buy a granola for breakfast. So in looking at the amount of sugar, you see that this one says 3 grams, whereas the other says 16. 16. The FDA actually recently changed their labeling, so over the next 2 years, packages will contain a separate line that will designate the amount of added sugar, that is actually in the food. So for these, they just list the total sugars, but like I said, over the next 2 years, there'll be a new line added underneath that amount that will say total added sugar. So after you check the amount of sugar, you can clearly tell that this is the healthier product. The next step is to look at the ingredients. Like I mentioned, there are over 61 names for added sugar that many people aren't aware. Oh, okay, it doesn't say sugar, but there are other aliases for sugar that you might not be aware of. So for example, dried cane syrup is another name for sugar. Brown rice syrup is another name for sugar. Molasses also counts as a sugar. Other examples are dextrose, fructose, honey, malt syrup, high fructose corn syrup, just to name a few. So you really want to be aware when you're looking at the ingredients that you note not only sugar, but its many common names. So the other thing to look at is where sugar falls on the ingredient list. So items that are near the front are in the highest amount of the ingredients, whereas items that are towards the end of the list are the minor amount of the ingredients. So those are the 2 biggest things you can do to be aware of the amount of sugar in a product. Other tips at home that you can do to just reduce your sugar intake, like I mentioned before, is buying the unsweetened varieties of yogurt, oatmeal, non-dairy milks, and flavoring them yourself with your own fruits, spices, and other toppings. Additionally, reduce your amount of sugar-sweetened beverages by drinking water infused with fruits and herbs and spices, or watering down your juice. And lastly, I think it's best to mention that this should not all be done at once. It's really important to make gradual changes over time so that you can allow your taste buds to adjust to a lower sugar diet and really make lifelong sustainable changes. So thanks again for joining me. I hope you all learned a little bit about ways to reduce added sugar in your diet, common sources of added sugar, where they are hiding, common names, and also ways to reduce the sugar. All right, I will see you on our next tour.